Hey friends, another gorgeous morning on the lake. Look at this. Not a bad environment to step into as you're waking up. So, I've kind of been wrestling with something for the past day or so. Really, kind of yesterday was where I felt this showing up, and then I was kind of dealing with it, working with it. And so, I'm gonna have to maybe talk my way into this a little bit, but I've been reflecting on something that David Deida mentions in his book, The Way of the Superior Warrior, which is Way of the Superior Man. I'm confusing two book titles. And because he talks about how when a man, and he makes a specific distinction between just any male gendered human being and a man with a masculine core, which he says is basically a man who is identified with and animated by primarily masculine energy, because that's not necessarily the case just because you have a male body. I think he says something like 80 to 90% of the population are sort of just, you're born in a gender and you inhabit that gender pretty comfortably, and that's the primary energy that drives you. And then somewhere between 10 and 20% of the population have a different energetic balance. But for men with a masculine core, there's a thing he talks about when we experience suffering, when we experience loss, when we experience frustration, something we're working with, often in the book he's talking about men in relationship with women and the energetic balance kind of required to keep a relationship with a woman healthy and vibrant and polarized in a healthy way. And so one of the things he says is that it's important for men not to always express to their partner all the different feelings that are coming up, all the different struggles that they're having, all the different fears, and rather that a man should hold those and work with those internally, work with those in silence, deal with his pain in silence, I think, is how is one of the phrases he uses. And so this is something that I've read that book 2 or 3 or 4 times now, and I find it strikes me every time. I find it really interesting because there's, in some ways, if we look at sort of like the historical, cultural evolution of masculine expression over the last 100, 200 years, there's a trend in the direction of men being more expressive, and God knows we needed that, still need that. There's still, I would say, a preponderance of cultural, just going to turn the monitor down a little bit. Annalise may be waking up super early, hopefully not. There's still a cultural preponderance, or a preponderance in the culture of sort of imperatives around men not being expressive, keeping that stuff in. And for God knows, for a long time, there was probably, that sort of like male reluctance to share what was going on was probably like the best incubator for toxic masculinity that we could have created. Because, you take all this incredibly powerful, difficult energy, these real life and death questions that men have faced, women have faced them too each in their own way, but that men have faced throughout the ages in this case, and you stuff them inside individual male minds and bodies and spirits, and then they're supposed to not talk about it, they're supposed to just deal with it. No wonder we get eruptions of unhealthy expression and kind of a twisted sense of what it means to be masculine, and a desire to dominate women as a means of alleviating the masculine fear of lack of control, because everything feels so out of control internally. So I'm not, and I don't think David Deida is saying that we need to make men less expressive in that way. But what he's pointing to is a very specific and very important aspect of spiritual practice, and I think particularly for men with a masculine core, a certain kind of spiritual practice where we actually we're expressing what's going on, or at least expressing what's going on to our partner. Actually dilutes and weakens the spiritual process that we are being called upon to go through with our trials and tribulations and challenges in life. And I notice this in myself as somebody who has been steeped in a pretty progressive culture, where I have been encouraged to express a lot of that. And even in intimate relationships, it's sort of the norm now that we express these things. I've been kind of steeped in that more liberated or more expressive form of masculine expression, and what I noticed though is David Deida is right in some ways. There's some ways, like there were some ways yesterday I was I've been talking about it on this post. There was some stuff I was wrestling with, stuff I was working with, and I kind of couldn't. I had a strong desire to let it out, but there was something telling me, don't talk about it, or at least don't talk to Katie about it, who would kind of be my go-to person. And because I just had the sense that if I let it out, if I start talking about it, it'll diffuse, it'll discharge the charge in me that is reckoning with this and that wants to change this, that wants to create a different reality, a different set of circumstances for myself. And that charge is excruciating sometimes. It can be completely, it's like, this phrase that came to me was like, swimmer's itch for the soul. I've got the answer to Jack Canfield's book. swimmer's itch for the soul. And I'm thinking of swimmer's itch because I got it the other day. It makes your skin crawl. It just, whoa, it just feels like it's gnawing at you on the inside. But what I noticed over the course of yesterday, by simply sitting with this, which is different than repressing it. Repressing it means blocking it out of my awareness, taking it and pushing it below the surface of my subconscious and trying to distract myself, trying to express that energy in other ways that aren't pointing directly to the thing, that aren't actually a direct expression of the thing. They're the charge of that thing, wanting to go somewhere but not being allowed to say it this way, so you say it that way and it comes out sideways and kind of twisted. That's repression. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being consciously holding it, consciously holding the discomfort. But at the end of the day, I felt this slight lift in my psyche. I was like, and it was weird because I wasn't expecting it. But I was like, huh. I kind of managed that today, didn't I? Like, I don't even know it's not even a good way of saying it. I don't know what quite the expression was that I would use to describe it, but I just felt a lift that felt like an outgrowth of having worked with my own shit without needing to vent the energy. And I could afford to do more practice like that. I would say I feel like a beginner at that. But it feels really important. And especially as a man, with the way things come up for me and the way that my identity wrestles with certain kinds of challenges or, life. I think it's important to keep some of that inside me and to acknowledge that work is internal. Some of that work is internal. Doesn't mean there's no place for expression. Doesn't mean that there won't come a time when expressing this is very healthy. But it means that there is a place for that lone, internal, it's essentially a kind of like active meditation. And it's important. It's also part of this process. And I think, this is where we have to get really discerning in our own journey and in our own choices about how we... Hello, little spider. What are you hanging on to? There's more creatures out here crawling on you. Wow, you are just dying to be on me, aren't you? It's very cute. There's a place for that interior work. And it's not the same as repression. But it is empowering. I think that's maybe the way to express what I experienced yesterday. I felt empowered by carrying that weight all day, essentially, without giving it a place to vent out of my system, by just letting it sit in my psyche and kind of chewing on it, I was able to, I got a sense of empowerment by the end of the day. And I had not expected that. You know, when you're doing that work, that lone work, it feels like it's just never going to end. It feels like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to change this. I'm not sure I can. I don't feel like I have the power. There's a kind of like, I mean, now I'm maybe expressing my own version of this. I'm not saying that's universal necessarily, but those are the things that come up for me in holding it. And so you don't want to hold it. You want to get rid of it. You want to tell somebody about it. You want to get validation that it's not the end of the world. You want to find ways of diffusing the energy. It's incredibly difficult not to. But that's not always the way. Sometimes just letting it sit, and I think a good litmus test of like whether we're doing this active engagement with the thing or whether we're repressing it is it on our mind? If it's not on our mind, if it kind of like drifts from our awareness and then just comes back in like a flare of anger or pain or fear, then we might want to look at like, okay, well, maybe I do need to express this because I'm avoiding it. And if I'm avoiding it, then I can't even quite get my hands on it. I can't quite hold on to it. Maybe I need a little help to keep it in my mind, in my psyche. But if it's able to just be there and just be a little swimmer's itch for the soul, then we can sit there with our own swimmer's itch. And there's a weird empowerment that comes from that. It's like a spiritual conviction that the problem has not dominated us. Ultimately, whatever it is an illusion anyway. It's something it's something that's trying to evolve us. And sometimes sitting with it, holding it, taking it in, letting it be in us puts our whole spirit, mind, body, spirit in a crucible where it's like we're being forged in an oven. We come out stronger. So I'm affirming that mostly for myself, because I still have to be very conscious about how I do that kind of work. And I'm sharing it because I think it's important. And I think maybe some of you will also get a sense of, I'm not alone in this. Even though the work is done alone, none of us are alone on the path overall. So that's where I'm at today, folks. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.